we're getting ready for our new season. So it's from 9 till 6 every day in the story room, trying to figure out new stories that we haven't told yet in the last 22 seasons of our show.
So describe what that's like. What is a day in the writer's room?
You come in and you've had your coffee hopefully, and of course you make your lunch order, which is extremely important. But no, then on a show like NCIS, I've been on many. If you were able to see, I've been very well traveled. Until I got to NCIS in season 9, thinking it might have a year or two left in it. I had friends on the show that brought me in, and I'm going into my 15th season now. So when I got there in season 9, I pitched 3 or 4 story ideas, and they were like, "Nope, we did that in season 2. Nope, we did that in season 5. Nope, we already did that." So here we are now, going into season 23. I keep waiting. It might be 22, but I think it might be 23. My 15th season on the show. And yeah, we're all out of ideas, but thankfully we have new characters that have come and gone into the thing. So we've tried to figure out new ways to tell stories about them. And so it is. It's a collaboration. You come in the morning, you have your coffee, you order lunch, and you talk about what movie you saw recently, or what's going on with your home life or whatever, because that often spawns ideas. Or we should do an episode like that. The little story you just told me about your son. It's like, oh, that sparks an idea. We can do that. So
how many of you are in the room?
Right now, there's 7 of us, so I'm one of 7, and with 22 episodes a year, that's good. That's a good amount. I've been on some staffs that have had like 10 people, and that seems to always be a little bit too much, and then or 5, and then you're just writing like crazy. So we try to write individually. We'll write. I'll write like 3 to 4 episodes a year. So out of that, just those are my specific episodes to write. And when I'm not doing that, I'm helping others figure out their stories and all that. So and doing producerial stuff. That's other parts of the job.
So when you come in and you throw out some ideas that had already been done, what's your reaction? Were you watching the show before?
Yeah, of course, but you forget. And also, too, when it's that many years,
9
again, I've been on
seasons,
shows for 5 years, and it's like, we did that season 1, it's season 5 now. It's like, is that enough time? Can we change it enough to make it look a little bit different? So, we'll do versions of the same story because, it's, anyone that's, read Shakespeare, there's someone that says all the stories came from Shakespeare. These are all derivations of that. So, and if you watch any, say, Aaron Sorkin series, he rips himself off all the time because he tells really great stories, and so he'll use a similar storyline on a different episode, and we do that too. We just try to, and how can we make this different? How can we ratchet it up? How can we make it better this time around? This. What were the limitations of the story before? Who are the actors we're working with now? We went from Mark Harmon, who's a miracle of a guy, to another miracle in Gary Cole. We just have really great recasting. So, and we try to write to our actors' strengths. They're all strong in so many things, but some characters are different than others, and so thankfully for that, we feel like we never have to go stale. We're not just. I hope I'm not making it sound like we're just recycling stories. It's like, no, we can, and also with the times move. There's stories we told in season, before I got there in season 9, but like we go back and watch some episodes from, seasons 2 or 3, and we're like, ooh, that's not even like appropriate anymore. So there's things that aren't, PC now that were okay back in 2003. As weird as that sounds, but it's 20-something years ago where you could get away with certain stories, and now it's like, yeah, no, you'd never say that now. So
how is that when you're writing now and you have to constantly censor yourself in a way?
Yeah, I mean, you try to tell the story without censoring it. There's the famous Seinfeld episode of the contest. It was about masturbation. It's like they never said the word masturbation once in there, so it was just this contest they had. So, if we're dealing with some sensitive subject matter, you come up with creative ways to talk about it without talking about it, or just at least give the audience an idea about it. When I joined the series, we had never done an episode about sexual assault in the military, and it's it's a problem, and it still is. But then we worked closely with the Navy, and they were sort of, could you maybe not, we're working on it. We really are. We're making strides, and they are. They're really working very hard on not allowing it, obviously. But we hadn't done a show about it because they didn't kind of want it publicized. So when they finally let us do it, it was with a lot of. But I had to, instead of getting graphic about it, I had to do a CBS Tuesday at 8 version that's totally different from a 11 o'clock on HBO version about sexual assault in the military. So you find it again, if you're creative, you kind of have a cowboy mentality or a cowgirl mentality of like, I can write anything, so you try to like, okay, how can I tell this story without getting too ridiculously graphic? One of the things about our show that I've been told is, one of its strengths is it's like you can watch it with the family, without it being like a very vanilla show. But it's sort of like we don't tread in areas where like a grandchild won't get embarrassed in front of their grandma watching the show. They're just watching a good murder mystery get solved, So with jokes and heart thrown in, So that's sort of the job.
So after all these years, do you feel like you have creative freedom for the most part, or does the network step in a lot and kind of change the direction?
They certainly have a say, and we certainly try to honor what they do because they know what makes a good show great. And especially when I joined in season 9, someone joked, I'd been on a show previously where there was a lot of network interference. And when I got to NCIS, the network was very easygoing on because they kind of liked what we were doing. We were their big old hit show. We were their tentpole. And one of the network people joked to me like going, yeah, we don't know why it works. We're just glad it does. So just keep doing whatever it is you're doing. But they certainly knew why it worked, and it had to do with the relationships between the characters. That's always the star of any show you're doing. But no, there's not much network interference at all. They sort of cheerlead us and want us to continue to succeed, and they kind of keep wanting us to do things to support that, But yeah, they have veto power. If we write something or we pitch something please don't do that.
Has there ever been a situation where you've been super excited about the script and they were just like, nope, not doing it?
On NCIS, no. This is probably a terrible example, but years ago I wrote on a show called Third Watch, which was wonderful, and I had written a show about a collapsed building, and that I was so excited about. It was my first script for the show. Building collapse. Our heroes were trapped. Our heroes were cops and firefighters, and this is probably a very bad example, but I wasn't disappointed because the reason that we didn't shoot it was 9/11 happened. As we were just starting to prep it and starting to cast it, and the boss, John Wells, was super excited about it. This is a great script. Oh man, this is going to be a great episode. We'll put it during sweeps. This will be wonderful. And then 9/11 happened, and obviously the last concern of any of us was my crappy little episode. So it just became very trivial at that point. We were in John's office after that, myself and Ned Bernero, and who had co-created the show, and he's a genius in his own right. And yeah, we were basically talking about, okay, this monstrous disaster just happened that especially afflicted cops and firefighters, and that's our show. Can we even go on? And then John said, in the rank of, important things, Scott, your episode will never see the light of day. And I was like, I completely understand that. So, so it's just one of those. But in terms of the network shooting it down, I haven't really had that. Mm-hmm. Usually, if they shoot it down in the idea phase, that's one thing. I haven't gotten too married to the idea yet. But I've never handed in a script and have them go, no, you can't shoot that. So thankfully, knock wood. That'll probably happen tomorrow now that I've said it. So
you were an aspiring actor.
I was such a good actor, I'm a writer now. That's how good I was. So.
So how did that happen? How did the transition happen?
Well, I got out of college and I said, I did a little bit of theater in high school before I discovered sports, and that kind of took over. And then I went to college to be a gym teacher, to be a coach, to coach sports, and promptly failed out of college because I couldn't hack. When you went into this specific state school in upstate New York, SUNY Cortland, they threw all kinds of, freshman sciences at you. They didn't want you to go, no, you're not majoring in volleyball here. You're going to have to really learn some things. So it was like freshman biology and psychology and all these, and sociology, and freshman English. So, I got this ridiculously bad report card that I was sure was a mistake. It was like 109, it was like the worst. And it was just shortly after Animal House came out. So it was like on a par with one of those Animal House GPAs. But at any rate, they said, I went back and appealed. I'd flunked out and appealed to the dean, and he looked at my report card. He goes, Jesus. He goes, 2 D's, an F, and an A. Well, you got an A in freshman English. Why don't you be an English major? And I was like, could I stay in school? He's like, yeah. So I was an English major, and I basically then was able to bullshit my way through term papers. But in the back of my head, I gave it no value because I was like, I'm just wanting to stay in school. But in the back of my head, I just always had the acting bug in my head. As a kid, having seen Charlton Heston in Planet of the Apes and those kinds of things, or watching The Honeymooners, it's like, I want to do that. I want to make people laugh, or I want to make them cry. I want to do that. So when I got out and leaving that school, because I had done none of that in school, I was a radio DJ, and I bartended for it was my first bartending job was in college. So having a great time. But as I got out, people were like, well, what is it you want to do with your life, Scott? And I said, I'm going to go be an actor, which I may as well have said astronaut, given the amount of, experience I had. And only one person, most people were like, what the, actor, what, you've done none of that. One teacher, actually it was one of the professors who gave me one of those D's my freshman year. He was in the bar, and he asked me, what are you going to do with yourself? I said, I'm going to be an actor. And he goes, I could see that. And I'm behind the bar at the moment, and he goes, you've got personality, and I can see all that. And then he says, but this craft will serve you well down there, meaning bartending. And I'm thinking in my head, like, buddy, I'm going to be on the cover of the Rolling Stone in 2 years. I'll be a movie star. What are you talking? I'm not going to have to need bartending. Well, of course, that was the very beginning of my 12-year bartending career, during which time I went to the neighborhood playhouse. I studied with a guy named Greg Zittel, who was my mentor at the time, and the late, great Greg Zittel. But I love the acting part of it. But I could audition and play some commercials and soap work and things like that in New York in the 80s, but never made a living enough to become, to not have to bartend. Cut to about 1990. Actually, it was exactly 1990. New Year's 1990 was my last night tending bar in Manhattan. And again, lots of plays, lots of commercials, some soap work, but nothing substantial. Me and some friends, let's move to L.A. If you're going to give acting a shot, move to L.A. So I went and promptly found another bartending job because my money I'd saved ran out pretty quickly. And but also then friends of mine and I started a theater company. And what we would do is throw like $100 in a pile and rent a theater and say, okay, kids, we're going to put on a show in a month. Everybody bring in a one act or a short sketch or something along those lines it's sort of an audition piece. And the conceit usually was something like, everybody find a play that takes place in a restaurant, and we'll set it in a restaurant, and everyone will come in and out of the restaurant and do their piece. And generally it was just for like agents, casting directors, producers to see us. This first one we did went really, really well. And then the second one came around, and again, I was still bartending at the time, but I had a bunch of actors come to me, 6 of them, I remember, come to me and just say like, and these were all like expatriate New Yorkers for the most part. And they came to me and said, we don't like the play we chose. We don't like each other. Can we get our money back? And I probably had it in my sock drawer from bartending. There's $600, but my ego took over, and I went, just give me one night. Give me a night. And I had this old IBM Selectra typewriter. Remember the big typewriters with the ball? And I basically sat down and plunked out, okay, I have 6 characters. What could I come up with? And I started plunking out an SNL type sketch for them.
This is your first time writing?
First time. The first time I like tapped keys since I'd been in college. So this is like over almost 10 years later. But I always describe it as, 2 pages into that SNL sketch, I had an experience that I never had as an actor, which was I always describe it as the applause came from within. Suddenly I was like, oh, that's funny. Oh, that's cool. Wait, then I can have her say that, and he could say that, and then, hey, I'm really clever, A feeling I don't have now. Now writing is like, fuck, I suck. This, I'm so mad. What are they going to say? I'll tell you more about that later. But okay. The joy of writing that first thing, getting it on the page, going to the old Xerox machine or whatever we had in 1991, and then having them read it and like it, and then us putting it on stage, it was like, I was a junkie. It was like in my veins. I'm like, I'm going to pursue this with all of myself, because it was just a great feeling. Everyone laughed in the right places. Everybody reacted in the right places. So from then I kind of set out to write my Rocky, be Sylvester Stallone writing my Rocky. I'll write my movie. So I took as many screenwriting classes as I could find, UCLA Extension, John Truby, Robert McKee. And just basically my life for the next 2-3 years was write all day and bartend every night. That was just my life. And I also managed my apartment building in the Fairfax district at the time. So that was my life. And, was getting rejected all over town. I was back before you could send out PDF files on email, it was to print the script at the printer and then put it in the big yellow manila envelope with the letter and the stamps and the
hand deliver everywhere,
or knock on doors and say, please read this. So just tons of rejection for the next 3 years. But
what would they say? What were the rejections?
Hey man, the writing's good, but we just don't have room. Or hey, my stable is this. Or hey, I got some coverage back from a couple of places that were good first effort or good second effort, with various scripts, but not enough to warrant signing me or giving me a shot or producing a film of mine. So, which is not that unusual. I mean, you got a stack of scripts. Some are better than others, but they would acknowledge at least good scene work, funny dialogue, things like that, which I think my acting career kind of helped because while I was acting, I was reading lots of Arthur Miller and Sam Shepard and all that stuff too. So I was very well, versed in dramaturgy. I guess that's the word. It probably means something else entirely. But eventually, I'm tending bar at a place in Santa Monica, continuing to be rejected all over the place, but still writing every day. And Sean Penn came in the bar one night with a regular customer of mine, Vinny. And I just, I'm used to celebrities at the bar. How you doing? Whatever, shot the shit a little bit. Eventually, Sean left. And the minute he was out the door, I just grabbed Vinny over the bar. I got a script. He's perfect for it. He can star in it. He can direct it. He can rewrite the damn thing. I don't care. I need a break, All right. Give me the script. I'll give it to him. Next day, I give Vinny a printed script. He says he gives it to Sean, which he did, because about a week or so later, this woman, lovely woman, Leslie Myers, I'm still friends with her on Facebook. She's delightful. She just came in saying, hey, Sean's really busy and doesn't read, but I read your script. Do you need an agent? And I was like, yeah, I need an agent, yeah. And she had a friend who had made junior agent at Gersh. By this time, I'm almost 34 years old, and I meet this young kid, 25 years old, junior agent at Gersh, Abram Nelibotsky, God bless him, and he took a shot on me. He just said, this is really good. Gave me a couple notes. I addressed those notes, sent the script out. By this time, I had sort of given up on the write my Rocky. I was you know what? As a matter of fact, I think there came a time where my commercial agent would call me to say, hey, I gotta, I'd be writing something at home for free, and just trying to get discovered. And then my agent would call and say, hey, I have a commercial audition down in Venice. Can you be there in an hour? I'd be like, yes, fine, I'll go. But this one particular time, I just stopped, and my then girlfriend, future wife, I just said, I don't want to go. I'm having more fun writing this. And she goes, don't go. So I called my agent back. I said, you know what? I'm not going to go to this thing. I can't make it down there. As a matter of fact, you know what? Stop sending me out altogether. I hadn't booked in a year or two. I said, I think I like the writing thing better now. So that was my official act of quitting acting. But Vinny, Sean Penn, new agent, they send the script around town. I get 17 meetings out of that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just big time. I was very excited. 16 of those meetings were, hey, this is great. Let us know when you write something else. And I was like, I have a stack of scripts on my desk. They're like, yeah, no, terrific. They always say, Hollywood's the one place where you could actually die of encouragement. It's like they were all telling me, you're super, but we're not going to do anything with you. But then one of those 17 meetings, luckily, was Ray Liotta's managers. Keith Addis and Nick Wexler. They called me in and said, more or less, hey, this is good. You should write for Ray Liotta. And this is about 3 years after Goodfellas. So I'm I'm missing my bartending shift, and I'm like, you know what? I really should write for Ray. Yes, you're right. Try to keep my cool inside. I'm going, fuck yeah. But at any rate, so I meet with Ray, and they give me an article from a New Yorker magazine, New York Magazine or New Yorker, and about corrupt cops in the 80s. And so I go away and I come up with a pitch, and I go and I pitch Ray, and Ray's really sweet, but he's just going, I don't know, sounds good to me. Sounds good to you guys? They were like, sure. And we came up, they hired me. I couldn't believe it. And I actually, my first professional script payment was signed Al Liotta. I'm like, and it was Ray's father who held Ray's like money in New Jersey. Like he was his banker. He was his money man. So I'm like, wait, Ray's paying me directly? They were like, yeah, Ray's paying you. It's pretty,
It's a nice pat on the back, huh?
Well, yeah, it was really pretty great. And there's actually, if I'm not boring you already, there's a story about the money and about imposter syndrome, if you care about that.
Oh, of course we do. We always care about imposter syndrome. That's actually something we've talked about unplanned with almost every guest, I think.
Yeah, because it's anyone that says they don't have it at some point or another is indeed an imposter. They're like, they're full of shit. But I got the gig, and I was, beside myself. Holy shit, I'm going to write for Ray Liotta. And I went to New York to meet with some old cop buddies of mine who were going to take me on some ride-alongs so I can get some more, research in. And, beforehand, before they hired me, my agent, my 25-year-old agent, calls me up and goes like, okay, Scott, they've offered $25,000 for you to write this script. And I'm like, you said yes, right? Yes. Sure, yeah, $25,000. Yeah, go, let's go. Let me do my job. I'm going to counter off. I'm like, well,
no.
I'm like, what are you going to ask for? He goes, 75. I'm like, no, I'm a bartender. What are you talking about, 75? I'm not, no. So he said, calm down. Let me get my agent. I'm like, you're 25 years old. You don't know shit. What are you doing? You're going to cost me this. I'll be back on my shift next week.
You're turning red, reliving this all
I'm
over again.
Yeah, exactly. I still wake up. Yeah. Listen, I still have bartending nightmares. I still will be laying in bed dreaming of like, I'm out of ice. The bar is 5 deep. I'm out of ice, vodka, and clean glasses. I'm running around like crazy. So we all have those still. I think it's some version of that. But at any rate, he calls me up. He goes, okay, we've closed at 55. I'm like, 55? $55,000 they're going to pay me. They're going to pay me to write a movie for $55,000. So I'm in New York. I'm going on ride-alongs, and I'm freaking the fuck out. And so I went and saw my mentor, Greg Zittel. He was teaching an acting class, and I went down to see him. And it was a little, local hero makes good. Like, hey, Greg, I got a job. This is great. But I talked to him as I would, he was almost a de facto father. And I just said, okay. I told him the exact story I just told you. And he's like, wow, 55,000. I'm like, if I don't get this right, like 55,000, I'm not worth that. And all the imposter syndrome, all the who the hell am I to deserve $55,000? I'm nobody. I'd have done it for free, And he heard it and he went, yeah, boy, that's a lot. I hear you. And he says, tell you what, just hang out in class. We'll go grab a beer after. We'll talk about it. So I'm in the back of this acting class, like looking at girls and stuff, and he's coaching the actors up there. And acting teachers a lot of times will use, examples. I need you to think of this scene. It's as if, and they'll give you an as if, and it's as if you walked on your parents having sex, or whatever the as if is. And in this case, he managed to say something to me while coaching them and making it germane to their scene. He goes, I don't know, hold on, it's as if. Let's just say someone wants you to write a movie for, I don't know, $55,000. So I'm in the back of the room like, and I'm the back of his head, and I'm watching the actors listen to him coach. But he basically said, and I can't come up with the exact words, but it was the theme of it was, let me tell you something. They're not paying you $55,000 to write a script. They're paying you for every keg you ever changed, for every fight you ever broke up, for every rejection letter you ever got, for every time you've heard no. They're paying you for all the dues you've paid up. You are writing this script for free. They're not paying you for that. He goes, but they clearly like what you do enough to give you $55,000. So just do what you do. You don't need to do more than what you are. You're enough. So now I'm in the back of the room, and he's telling these people that, and I'm like bawling in the back of the room where I'm trying not to cry, but I'm just like, okay. So that advice, when imposter syndrome strikes, and it hits I'm almost written 100 episodes of television at this point, and still there's a point in Act 3 where I'm like, fuck, this is where I get found out. Shit, I'm not smart enough to figure this out. Why did I take up this job? I should be building fences. I'll go back to tending bar. This is awful. But I will then in my head say, you're enough. What you do, you know how to do this, In retrospect, I can look back and it was very real then, the voices of doubt in my head. Now, obviously, I was an old guy. I'm able to kind of go, all right, you've had this noise before. You've worked through it, so just keep working. But it's still there, and you kind of make a relationship with your self-doubt too, a little bit too. You kind of go, yeah, there's that voice again telling me I'm no good, or that I'm not going to be able to figure this out. And you gain a relationship, and it doesn't have power over you after a while. But that's a very long answer to you started as an actor, but that's how I made the transition at any rate. For the Ray Liotta movie, didn't get made. But they loved it. Ray Liotta's manager signed me. In that movie, that script became a calling card. Ray had made a couple of movies after Goodfellas where he wasn't opening films anymore. That whole thing. Back in the day, it was like, you needed a name that would open. Mm-hmm. They couldn't just air it on Netflix. You had to be able to fill theaters. So a couple of Ray's movies that he tried to, be the lead in didn't make the money they wanted. So it sort of like sat on the shelf for a while, but it became a calling card. It got me a job with Ray Liotta. Not Ray Liotta. The Ray Liotta script got me a job with Ron Howard. Ooh. I got to write like a 70s biker movie for Ron Howard, which was another amazing experience, but did not get made. So and then another script I had done previously got optioned by Kevin Costner. So it was like, I was surrounded by really good people. And then nothing was getting made until the script landed. And if we talk about Shane's inspiration too, I'll include this story.
Of course.
At some point, I got a call from Stephen Bochco's people, David Milch specifically, who had created NYPD Blue. And somehow he got a hold of the Ray Liotta script and just said, "Hey, you want to write television?" And I was like, "Yeah." There's a story about that too. But anyway, so I've been lucky to be writing television from about 1997 through now, so I've been super blessed and lucky and all that. I'm knocking metal, whatever that does.
I don't
is that
know
extra luck? I don't
you could knock that instead if it's real.
So
yeah.
Very long answer to you used to be an actor question.
Well, that's exactly what's interesting about this, understanding the journey and what were the steps that you took that actually got you to this place. So that was actually the perfect answer.
Okay, good.
So what's happening when they're saying this movie is not being made? What's happening that it's not being made? Like the budget isn't being put behind it, or like
there's so many different reasons why they'll tell you that. And again, I've been out of the film industry now for a while. I've been solely in television now, but there's tons of reasons why things don't get made. Either like it's like the person that's attached. In Ron Howard's case, Ron has and had and still has this great producer with him, Todd Hallowell. So Todd had acted as like Ron's right-hand man and producer on his films. And at some point, Ron just said, how about I produce and you direct? And Todd's going, I always want to make a 70s biker movie. Well, here's a bunch of scripts of people that we like. And out of however many scripts they gave him, he picked out my Ray Liotta script. So next thing I know, I'm writing about 70s bikers making meth and all this stuff. But the story we kept getting back was it's like, studios are a little, the heroes are bikers. They rape women. They're scummy. They're this, they're that, My apologies to any bikers who are watching this. Like, there's some really great people in this thing. So, but this is pre-Sons of Anarchy. Sons of Anarchy managed to, and again, my stuff wasn't far off from that, but they had just in the early 90s or so, it was like, biker gangs, I don't know. And it's like, you just did Goodfellas and The Godfather and that stuff. But there was always some reason. Notice I'm not saying because the script wasn't good enough. It's possible the script wasn't good enough. They may have read it and just kind of like, it's good, but it's not great. It's not, we're not in the market for that sort of thing. The film industry it's a tough one. I did do one more film when I started in television. I did a couple of things. I did a rewrite for a Ray Liotta or oh God, what's his name? Andy Garcia. Wonderful Andy came in, and they hired me for a rewrite of an Andy Garcia film, which was a lot of fun, and he was wonderful. And unfortunately, I guess they ran out of. It was like foreign money, and they ran out of money for prints and ads, and so it eventually went straight to video. But and then I had written a film when I was in Cortland in upstate New York. I became aware of, and I'm a big football fan. There was a guy named Ernie Davis who was the first Black Heisman Trophy winner out of Syracuse. He had come after Jim Brown, who's regarded as the greatest football player of all time. And Jim did not win the Heisman Trophy a couple of years before because it was in the 50s, and white reporters were like, and also he was a black man that was considered uppity. Like he was like, he was vocal. Ernie was a little less so. Ernie was a little more humble and quiet and stuff. So when Jim didn't win it, Ernie was a natural, and he was a wonderful player. And but unfortunately, he before he ever got to play professional football, he got leukemia and died within like a year. He was drafted by the Cleveland Browns and never got to play. At any rate, I'd always been a big fan of Pride of the Yankees, which was the Lou Gehrig story about this the player on the Yankees who died of the disease that came to be named after him, Lou Gehrig's disease. But I said, I don't want to remake that, but this is sort of a Lou Gehrig story of a great young athlete who was wonderful in every way, who tragically died young. So I went around, pitched that all around town, sold it to Universal, and this is while I was writing for Third Watch. It was during a break on Third Watch, and I wrote it for a couple of years because you don't just write, you just pump this stuff out. But I wrote it. They loved it. They gave me some notes. I wrote it again. The notes were a little in the area of, and this is again after I'd gone up and met like Ernie's like high school coach, who was very old, but the wife was very lucid and could tell me all kinds of great Ernie as a young man stories, and a lot of his teammates at Syracuse. So, but then I was getting notes of like, can you dirty him up a little bit, Ernie? Can you do, there was just certain things that they wanted, or they wanted the coach to be a little more racist than he was in real life and stuff. So I won't denigrate it because the movie did get made, but and the movie's it's a good film, but there are things in it that are utter fiction that didn't actually happen. And I think because I wrote a movie based on a real life story, and other writers got thrown at it, which is very typical in the feature world as well, where they liked my draft. They hired someone who'd done a Leo DiCaprio movie a few years before, and he came in and did a rewrite on it. And it got the interest of Dennis Quaid, but then Dennis Quaid had a really great writer that he'd worked with before, so he came in and did a pass on it. And then while I'm at Bones, ultimately, the credit comes back, and it's me and Dennis Quaid's guy, but story by us, written by the guy who replaced me. And I was like, screw it. I have a job. I'm fine. As long as the movie gets made, that's all that matters. I'll be happy. Well, guy who came in and replaced me, like, challenged it with the Guild. And the Guild ruled against me because they were like, well, it's because usually the person that, like, births the material, if I'd made the story up, they'd be very hard-pressed to take me off the film, take my name off the film. But because it was based on a real person, even though they fictionalized much of the story, I lost credit entirely. And so did Dennis Quaid's guy. This guy got like sole credit. I'm like, what the fuck? I was pissed, but not as pissed as I'd been if I didn't have a good job in Bones. I was writing on Bones at the time. And did I say that already? But yeah, so that's the movie business. And that's why I'm like, I'm going to stick with television. This is way too infuriating. I finally get a film made that's going to open. And it didn't do great at the box office. It did really well on cable. And it was really well told. There are scenes in it that are verbatim scenes that I wrote, that I'm watching it going, I can look at my script and go, they did the exact, but, the guy that came in and rewrote me, like, fictionalized enough stuff, changed enough names, which is very, it's some kind of a formality that that if they change 60% of the names in your script, they can claim ownership of it.
Oh my God.
But listen, No Will. It got made. Syracuse University now has Ernie Davis Field as a result of the movie getting made. It reminded them all about Ernie Davis and stuff. So I was like very happy about that part of it. But that's another very long answer to the movie business. Why don't movies get made? Some get made, some don't. Believe me, at the times that my scripts weren't getting, when Ray Liotta's thing didn't go, and then freaking Ron Howard can't get this movie made. I'd be walking through Blockbuster like, look at all this shit. Look at all these crappy movies that get made. You know what I mean? You walk through and you look at a lot of movies going like, how'd this thing get made?
Yeah.
But anyway, they made Ernest Goes to Camp, and I can't get my movie made.
Oh my God.
But at any rate, that's again why I really, I will tell you this, that when David Milch brought me in to talk about the Ray Liotta script and talk about me writing NYPD Blue, stupidly, I think, again, my own fear and my own imposter syndrome was, he goes, yeah, this is good, that's good, that's good. He goes, I like your writing well enough. He goes, I really like the fact that you attended bar for 12 years. I think that's a great thing. You got life experience. You got characters that you can write about. I was like, oh, that's great. And he says, so what do you say? Do you want to write television? And in my head, I was just like, well, I knew how to write movies, but I didn't know a thing about television. I'd never even considered television. So I just go, well, David, I think so, but I'm really more of a feature guy. I'm a movie guy, And he just looked at me like, really? When's the last time you heard action? And I was like,
ouch.
Never. It's just like right away I was like, yeah, never mind. I'm an asshole. I'll do TV. Yes, thank you so much. But I was just grateful that he wouldn't take no for an answer. He's just like, movie guy. Yeah, okay, yeah. What movies have you made? I'll wait. Let's hear. But and thankfully, thank God bless the man. He just he brought me on to he gave me an NYPD Blue to write. And on the strength of that, he then put me on staff of a show called Brooklyn South, and then that was a one season, but it was a great learning curve, and I met the great Ed Bernero, who then later brought me on at the Third Watch. So, relationship's been very good to me in the business. I will say that.
So when you're consistently working as a writer in the industry, are you at any point wanting to return to your acting career again and maybe write yourself into a script?
People ask that. A lot of the actor friends that I get on, they go, why'd you do this? You still have a SAG card? Because, once you get your name in SAG, you don't lose it. So but the dues for SAG are reflective of however much you've made that year. So I think my annual dues are like $12 or something, because I don't work as an actor anymore, but my name is still in SAG. But no, to be honest, and this will sound a little, however you take this as it will, but honestly, I have enough actor friends that are out of work that I'm like, I wouldn't feel good about just like taking a SAG gig away from somebody. It's like, if it's something that I know of an actor friend of mine or any actor that's needing the gig to get their insurance or whatever, it's like, I get paid really well as a writer. I'm very comfortable. So I'm sort of like, yeah, the ego in me is to be like, yeah, man. Or sometimes I'll be on set and I'll be watching, an actor that I hired just blow it, and I'll be like, oh, fuck. Should I just jump in there? That kind of thing. But no, I like I said, I don't want to take a gig away from anybody. Once on NCIS, I wrote an episode where Mark Harmon's character talks to our shrink, our therapist, played by Laura San Giacomo. And my conceit was, while the rest of the team's off solving this crime, he's in a bar deciding if he should turn himself into police for this terrible thing he did years ago. So, and he's sitting in a bar. Like, he calls the therapist, meet me in the bar, and she's like, well, this is a little different from my office and all that. So at any rate, and it's a couple of times where he just acknowledges, like, hey, can I get a refill, bartender? That kind of thing. And so I walk by his trailer after the script comes out. He goes, Scotty, nice script. I said, oh, thanks, Mark. I'm glad you like it. I'm excited. He goes, you're the bartender, right? I said, yeah, no, I'm good. He goes, no. You're the bartender. I'm like, okay. He's the boss. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be the bartender. So it was basically an extra work job. There were no lines. So, but I got to like be behind the bar and have wear the little apron and, and then he threw in the whole, Scotty, can I get a refill? He did those. I became Scotty the bartender. And the crew was kind of like, what's going on? Our writers don't act, but they caught on pretty quickly. And we all, it's a real familial place to work. So they were very supportive of it. But the fun part of that was not telling my mother. So however old she was at the time, she's 85 now. So, this is about 7-8 years ago. But, her sitting at home, and definitely part of her was she's super proud of my writing career, but of everybody wants to see their kid on TV. So, when I gave up the acting, she was like, oh, damn. But, so that was kind of neat, was not letting any of my friends or family know that I was going to be on the show. So they were all like, flipping out, hey, there he is. So
did you feel the thrill of it again?
A little bit. It was, I had to do a little bit of the, how do I stand? What do I do with my hands? What am I, and so there was a very little I had to do back and go back into my acting chops, if you will, to figure out how to play the scene. But, just listen and react. And, at some point I had to throw a guy fighting out, so I had to do a little, it wasn't quite stunt work, but, I was used to doing that as a bartender. I did it countless times in New York, but not as much in LA, but lots of people I threw out in New York. But at any rate, that's the closest I've come to rejoining someday if I, if once TV's done with me or writing or whatever, sure. Would I go and audition for something? Sure. But, or if I made my own little film, would I want to be in it? Sure. But, not in the seat I'm in right now. I'm very happy and comfortable in the job, When people ask about even acting or why don't you direct? And I'm like, I'm still trying to get good at the writing. That's how I think of it. I'm still trying to perfect this. I'm not going to move on to the next thing just yet.
So what would you say were the key achievements that made you as successful as you are, without which you just wouldn't have had, you wouldn't have been on this show?
The key achievements? You mean to land me on NCIS?
To land you not only on NCIS, but to be consistently a writer for different TV shows. What do you feel like were the key decisions you made and the achievements that actually put you in this position to actually have a consistent career in writing?
That's a really good question. I learned early on, I think, when you start out at this, you want everybody to say your words exactly as written. So you're kind of like the word police on your scripts half the time. And especially, in television, David Milch wrote so many of the first of those episodes of Brooklyn South. And myself and also Ed Bernero. Ed had been a Chicago cop. I'd been a bartender. We weren't being utilized. We were like, we're getting a paycheck every week. I feel like I don't do anything for this, But I was there. It was like being a lawyer on retainer. It's like if David needed us for a story point or to talk about a scene or to write a scene, we were there for him. But wanting so badly, the first time David Milch rewrote me, I was so appalled. Because I also just felt I thought it was good, and it's he just made it his own. I'm a baby freshman writer. Granted, I was probably one of the older freshman writers in my mid to late 30s, but also from that place of I want to contribute to the show, but it's David's show. He knows his characters better than anybody, and it's kind of the boss's is allowed to take whatever you give him and treat it like an outline and go I'm going to write it this way. We don't do a lot of that on NCIS. We tend to, give note writers and then let them write. Occasionally we'll have to rewrite a little bit. But that early on kind of helped me get over being quite as precious about my work. I still wanted my words honored and the story I was telling honored. So we all have that ego in us that did rear its ugly head a couple of times where I got into, I wouldn't say confrontations, but I was a bit of an asshole, where I'd just be Stephen Bochco walked by me. This is Stephen frickin' Bochco. He's going, hey, Scott, great script. And I just, you just hard to even admit saying this, but I just said, I go, yeah, thanks, Stephen. You should have read my draft. And I'm just next thing I know, Milch just comes to my office come here, walks me outside and just goes and David's, this Titus Welliver, who I worked with on Brooklyn South, is just an amazing guy, but he does the best David Milch, so I won't come close to that. But he just says, it diminishes you in my eyes when I hear you say things like that to Stephen, just basically just letting me know, kid, I fucking made you, and you're saying shit like that to the boss. Don't do that, And he was right. And
that was a nice way of handling it, though.
Yeah. No, he didn't like dress me down in front of anybody. Just walked me
Yeah.
outside and just let me know he was disappointed in me, and I was like, no, I suck. But but at any rate, it's definitely helped me. And there's been a couple of other places too where I let my ego get the better of me. Because if you're not writing with your heart, the thing I'll always say about writers, actors have a rough lot too because they're facing rejection every day. But like, you write with your heart and you throw it out there on the table and everybody gets a whack at it. Like I get notes from everybody but the guy at the gate, and even he's got some thoughts about my third act. You know what I mean? Like everybody has something to say about like your script. Now, you write something you think is good.
And then sometimes control over changing it in a way that you might not necessarily like.
Oh man, I'm just like, so I've explained to people that we had a camera guy that, I don't know, he got a talking to about something, and he goes, man, I just got taken to the woodshed. That's never happened. I go, never? I said, that happens to writers all the time. A version of that happens. I'm like, we eat shit every day because we have to compromise. We are the word is escaping me now, but we're all just working together to make a common good. But of course, my version I thought was better than sometimes I'll get notes and go like, wow, that did make it better. This is great. But the ability to collaborate, this is my long answer to what's kept me going so long, is that ability to collaborate and to be someone that plays well with others.
Which is hard because creativity isn't necessarily a collaborative process.
Well, that's it, and that's what I was saying. Where when you write with your heart, your heart's in that thing, and then people read it and they just kind of they assume you banged it out on the toilet that morning, and it's like, no, I've been sweating over this for a month, and you're just basically you read it on the freeway here, and you're giving me notes like you know about it. That's hard when someone that you feel like someone will be in casting going, I didn't see the character that way. I'm like, you read this thing this morning. Trust me, I wrote this. I've been working on this. This character's been in my head for months.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
Or a month since I hatched the idea to write it, because we're writing so many. But you learn to kind of play well with others, kill your darlings, stuff you're married to that maybe everyone else doesn't buy. You go, I'll use that in some other script. And you do. You end up like, you keep a little checklist. I'll even write them down sometimes of like, okay, this got cut out of that episode. Well, I'm going to use it in my next episode or some episode down the line. So yeah, an artistic endeavor, when you're laying yourself out there, like I said, actors, I was a little bit helped by you didn't get a role. You heard no. You auditioned. You didn't get it. You're like, they didn't like me. There was a certain, it was a little easier to kind of go, this is my script. This isn't me. This is my script. I wrote this. Here. So it didn't hurt quite as bad for me when I'd get notes on the script, because I could also do something about it. Like I could hear them and kind of go, oh, that is a better idea. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, fine. But, when an actor hears, be taller, be shorter, be funnier, be that, there's nothing you can really do about that. But I would say that's contributed to my longevity. I think, I'm sure there are people out there that might say like, oh yeah, Scott was kind of a dick because I noted him and he didn't take it so well. I've had that earlier in my career. I think the people I work with now, I've had people say this to me, like, I can't imagine you having an issue with network notes or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, no, there was a time, but I've just mellowed with age.
I'm
obviously.
zen now.
Yeah, a little bit, because I also recognize too, we're not curing cancer, we're not building rockets, we're not, it's like I'm writing entertaining television. And yeah, your heart gets broken. Like I said to that camera guy, I'm just like, yeah, we I hate just to put it in those terms, like we eat shit every day.
Yeah.
We're just gonna go. But unless if you want to live some semblance of a happy life, you learn to deal with that stuff and kind of go, it's just television. Okay, we're fine. I said, let's just move on. And like this is what they pay you for. They don't pay you for the writing. They pay you to take good or bad notes from people that maybe corrupts your original vision. Mm-hmm. And I'll sometimes watch an episode and go, my first vision was better at that. But then I'll also watch like, God, thank God I got those notes. This is so much better,
Huh.
So it does happen.
At least that happens sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not the sole genius in this business. So it's like I get lots of genius people around me going like, you really want to make this thing work? Do this. I'm like, why didn't I think of that? So I'm very grateful for that stuff. I always say that, the doubters on the outside, the people that doubt your aspirations or doubt your work are there to be proven wrong. So they're doing you a favor by being that. The bigger villain is the self-doubt. That's the one that you really, That's Don Quixote or whatever. That's you're tilting at windmills. That's the big thing that's you're constantly fighting against. So, collaborating and combating self-doubt and making friends with self-doubt probably has kept me going in this for as long as it has. So yeah, very lucky that way.
So for beginner writers who are trying to break into the industry, what advice would you give? What are the necessary steps to take, in your opinion?
Play well with others. Be able to take notes without killing the person giving you the notes or killing yourself. And do your best to just love what you do.
What about getting their foot in the door? How do you even get started? I mean, you had a very unique journey.
No two paths are the same.
Yeah.
There are people that I was an assistant for a number of years, and then I got a shot to write a freelance and that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's not a bad way to go about it, to get your foot in the door. There's no excuse for not working. That's why, again, my 12 years of bartending, I didn't intend for this, but it's it impressed David Milch. He was like, yeah, get me that bartender. Abram Nalabatsky, when he would brag up to his people about his new client, he was a bartender for 12 years. It was it lended color, And I always say to young writers about there's no excuse for not working. You should have to do something while you're working your way to get your foot in the door. If it's not in that door, just take any job you can get that's going to help you pay your rent and support your craft. Because I don't care if you're making French fries at McDonald's, do it with all of yourself, because someday you might write the script about the French fry maker who saved the world, and you'll be the guy that goes, I know about that world. I can write that, But in terms of getting your foot in the door, it is a matter of just relationship. I take lots of I'm of an age, as you can see, or as you can guess, that a lot of my contemporaries have kids or nephews or nieces or friends' kids or my boss's kid or whatever that want to be in the film industry. And because so many people help me on the way up, I rarely, if ever, say no. So I'll get calls about, can you just come talk? Can you talk to my nephew about the biz?
Yeah.
And I'll do my best to just give ideas on craft and give ideas on how to get your foot in the door. I will say that we're coming up against. It's here. I mean, AI's here. It's not writing scripts yet, and I don't know that it can. When you watch the best films, there's just too much humanity in there for this thing to replicate that. But it does a lot of other things, and I'm worried about other areas of the business. If anybody's coming in to be a set decorator or a camera person or actor, I hate to say it, but it's AI's pretty freaky right now. So, but when I do meet with young people trying to break in, I do my best not to squash their dreams, because I do think art will out. I mean, we're never not going to need artists, and but it'd be the ability to make a living at it right now. I think we're in for a bit of a challenge in the next few years in figuring out how that is. I think. Mark Cuban just said the other day, goes, if I was a kid in college right now, I'd be studying AI. I'd be studying how to master AI, make it work for me and not the other way around. That's what I would be working on. And I get that, and it's a strange turn of the tide right now. But like I said, I refuse to, and perhaps I'm, a dinosaur at this. It's when Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, it's was the whale oil industry going, they'll never not need us. We're always going to be necessary. Is this one of those times where we just are all foolish for thinking oh no, they're never going to replace us? In the writing area, I don't know. They can approximate it. I worry that a generation of people are going to come up not knowing the difference. They'll be able to watch something that AI created and go, that's entertainment. But think of the last great movie you saw, or a movie that moved you. Or even a TV show that moved you. I always use this silly, it seems like a silly example, but there was a show called Jury Duty. Do you remember Jury Duty?
Yeah.
So Jury Duty is this fake reality show about a jury, but they were all actors except for this one guy. And it was just it was epic, unbelievable television of these creative people every day, hitting this moving target of fooling this poor guy into, and then by episode 8, at the end of the thing, your faith in your humanity is restored because he's wonderful. The people are wonderful. It's just, and I remember it was during the strike, and I picketed, and I accosted lots of these actors on the picket line, going, "Dude, jury duty, unbelievable," and because I said, let's see AI do that, because I can't see AI like making up something like that, or looking at some of the better films that come out, that they're going to be able to replicate that. So again, I'm getting off in terms of getting your foot in the door. Persistence, honestly. I think the same is true as it ever was, where it's just like, be persistent. I'm an old dinosaur in this business. They're still needing young talent,
But who are you persistent with as a writer? Like, whose door are you knocking on?
Well, again, though, I knocked on Sean Penn's door. He doesn't know me from Adam. Sean's out there somewhere. If he's watching, thanks, Sean. I've always wanted to thank him for it.
Sean Penn and I actually have a mutual friend who was on the show. Yeah,
oh,
Elliot
wow, okay.
Mintz. And
who is it?
Elliot Mintz.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
sure.
So he mentioned bringing Sean on the podcast. So
there you
if
go.
that
Get
works
him.
out.
Well, again,
that
he
would
doesn't
be
know
cool.
me from Adam. He may remember Vinny from the bar in Santa Monica I worked at.
But what a great story.
Yeah, and again, I don't know that he had anything to do with it, but he either like took the script from Vinny and turned to my friend and said, "Here, read this, see what you think," and she got me started. So I'll always be indebted to her. But be persistent with anyone you meet. That everything's relationship. My agent, I love him dearly, but I think I'm a super easy client because the jobs I've gotten. I got to NCIS because I'd worked with Gary Glassberg at Bones, and we had a bit of a bromance at Bones. We were just like, we hit it off. He was a great guy. And then he left the show, and then I continued on with Bones. And I said, yeah, we got to work together again someday. And then comes, the next gig I got was from someone that I knew at Bones, and then the next one after that. It's all relationship.
Totally.
And then eventually Gary was running NCIS and called me up saying, I have an opening. Can you come? I'm like, yes, I'm coming over, But and actually, I'd left Castle, where again I was working with another friend who had recommended me for another show. So, and then I, try to return the favor to anybody I've worked with in the past if I can get them a foot into my door.
Yeah.
But in terms of people starting out, I shouldn't say it's a rough road for me. I was rather blessed in those, but I did it by, I think, just maintaining an
Sounded rough to me.
Well, I attended bar for 12 years, and I paid my dues in that regard. But and also I heard no a lot, and I had a great coach, like a life coach, a career coach, say to me like, quit going into meetings like dying for a yes. Mm-hmm. Just going in and you're collecting no's. Just go collect no's. Like it kind of like took the power out of no for me. It was just kind of going in like going, hey, I'm just coming in to meet and say hi, and this is me. I would never say like I'm probably not going to get the job, but that's okay. And no didn't have the same personal sting or power over me. I was just like, no, okay, well, it was a great meeting anyway. Yeah. And sometimes those meetings, gee, that guy took that no really well. Let me introduce him to so and so. It's like that sort of thing,
Probably even comes through as confidence that helps you in the long run. It does,
yeah. But early in your career, that
what do you mean my no didn't break you?
And also exactly, and also that confidence though is like fake it till you make it, because inside you're just going like, oh, I would kill for this job, and you got to go in going, hey man, I don't care if I get it or not. It's like that's when that's when the acting really kicks in of like I don't care if you like my script or not, and inside I'm going, I'm gonna go home and shoot myself, but not quite that, but I'm gonna go get a drink.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how even now you have to self-censor? You're like, oh no, somebody's going to take that the wrong way.
Well, that's it. I'm just going like, don't kill yourself for this. And don't kill yourself for any industry. It's not worth it. But there are other avenues. Meditate. Do something else.
Okay, so how do you end up being an How do you end up being an executive producer on the show?
I just had to talk about somebody with our couple of friends in our writers' room who just were bumped up to new positions. So when you come in as a writer, you're a staff writer, baby writer, you're a staff writer. Then you get bumped up to story editor, and then executive story editor, and then co-producer, and then supervising producer, and then co-executive producer, and then executive producer. So all of those titles, with maybe the exception of executive producer, is like you're just a writer. a friend of mine made supervising producer on Bones, and I could tell she was just jonesing to supervise someone. And I'm like, no, you're just a writer. We should all just still writers. And people, civilians, friends of mine will just be like, so what do you like better, the writing or the producing? And it's like, nah, if I couldn't write, they wouldn't let me produce shit. Like, it's like that. My chief function is as a content creator.
Well, is there a mini function as an executive producer?
Sure. No. So that's the other part I was going to say was generally I just had been a producer. And again, all of our writers help when their episode's being produced. They're in the room with the director and working with the director, and they're in casting, and they go to location scouts and stuff like that. So they're producing more or less. So they're earning that producer name, but and you just get slightly more responsibility maybe the higher up the food chain you go. So really over just a course of years, I eventually worked my way up to becoming an executive producer. I'd been a co-exec producer for a number of years, but again, writing, but treated with some degree of like seniority at least, if nothing else. And then like on this show now, an exec producer, I sit in on meetings that maybe I don't have a lot to say about, but I need to be in the know. The other job is I talked about supervising producers don't supervise, but exec producers do. It's like my job is when I'm not writing an episode that I'm physically going to write and produce and go to set for. I'm on set for some younger writers' episodes in order to answer questions there, maybe to help them, shepherd them along. And I'm in the story room helping those before me break their stories. They help me break mine. And then, while I'm writing mine, I'm helping the people after me break theirs. So it's like you're never not, because it's this beast that needs to be fed every 8 days. We shoot an episode in 8 days.
Wow.
So once the train starts rolling, we reported 2 weeks ago, we start shooting mid-July. And it'd be nice to have 2 or 3 scripts like in the hopper already, ready to go. Because once they start shooting, you're kind of chasing after it, and sometimes the window closes where they start to air faster than you can write them. So you really want to have that head start, There've been a couple of times where, the script we're shooting, has to be rushed through post because it's literally going to be on air in like 3 weeks, which is like super fast, Generally, we try to we'll finish an episode and it'll shoot and it's not going to air for a month and a half or 2 months or so. Like that's kind of the cushion we prefer. But like I said, we don't want to tell the network, hey, give us a rerun. We like keeping the momentum of the show going. But so executive producer. You have more responsibilities, but like I said, I don't, people make jokes, comedians I've heard make jokes about like no one knows what producers do. Like no one knows what executive producers do. What the hell does that mean? In films, it means people put up money. A lot of times people are like money producers, which is, and other people are visionary producers. But in television, it's like, I do know lots of non-writing producers, but maybe they direct, or maybe they have some other function. But for me, it's why you watch on your favorite show, there'll sometimes be like, 10 producers or, like 4 producers, 5 exec producers, 3 co-EPs. But generally you can watch those and go, oh, those are all writers. They just gave them those titles to make them feel good. But, so it's like that.
What would you say was the toughest challenge, whether personal or professional, in your life that maybe at one moment you felt could be impossible to overcome?
Well, that would be the Shane's inspiration story. Do you know? Well, you came to the gala, so you actually know that story. So, my wife and I, our first child was born with a severe disability. We had gotten pregnant on our honeymoon, and we were a little bit older parents, so we were in a hurry to get pregnant when we got married, and it was right around the time I was working for Ron Howard. I hadn't gotten into television yet, and all the prenatal tests were great, and we were going to have a boy, and we came up with the name Shane, and I had all nieces, and my then wife Catherine had, she had her nieces, so this was going to be a prince among the princesses. We were very excited, and Shane was born with a genetic disorder called spinal muscular atrophy, in that he never drew a breath. He was essentially born paralyzed from about here down. So SMA is this genetic disorder that The crueler version is you give birth to a healthy child, take that child home, and in a couple of weeks or months, the child goes gradually paralyzed from the toes up. Like it works its way up the body. So they've made enormous advances of it, and I have some friends with some adult kids with SMA now who are doing great. But at the time, in the mid-'90s, it still wasn't a whole lot that was known about it. I think like the gene that causes it was isolated like the year before we had Shane. Prior to that, they said if your baby was born a year ago, we would have been like shrugging, like we have no idea what took him. So fortunately, they were able to. But we lived in the hospital for 2 weeks at Cedars-Sinai. He was in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, and they allowed my wife and I to live basically in her hospital room for the 2 weeks so that we could go and visit him as often as we could. And it was at that time, my sister had flown in from New York. A buddy of mine that I bartended with lived in the Bay Area. He came down. And I remember saying to them, because they said the best case scenario for your child is he's going to spend his life in a wheelchair. And I had actually had, I kind of felt like God was punishing me a little bit because I had this sort of bias of my own where, my parents were working class, they worked 2 jobs each, putting their kids, but we were like middle class, but they busted their asses to do it. And they had a very common attitude about disability where, if you saw a wheelchair, like they'd give money to Jerry's kids on Labor Day weekend, they were generous in that regard and stuff. And they felt, oh, the poor little kid in the wheelchair. But if we saw a kid with a wheelchair in the street, like across the street, it's too awkward. It's too sad. I don't know how to talk to them. I don't know how to, those people. But again, this is 1960s America, 1970s. But so I had sort of a phobia of my own around disability, to be honest. And so when Shane was going to be in a wheelchair, I kind of thought, oh God, this, how am I going to do this? And one of the things I said to my sister when I'd written all these movies that weren't getting made, I said, I got to up my game. I got to figure something out. I got to retrofit the house with ramps. I got to pay for his medical care. I got to really push my career into overdrive if I'm going to raise a child with a disability, because it's, money helps. It's a ton of work, but the money would help. And then I always say that I put that out into the universe by saying it to my sister and my buddy. And the next day is when my agent called and said, I know this is a terrible time. I'm really sorry you're going through this, but David Milch read your script for Ray Liotta and wants you to write television. So it was like literally the moment I said I need to up my game, like the game showed up for me, and because television was very good news. I didn't know that at the time. Like I said, I was a feature guy, but television ended up being like a good steady paycheck that I would get. But unfortunately, though, Shane only lived 2 weeks. He grew. He had a very advanced case of SMA, where in utero the paralysis had moved up his body to where he was here. His eyes, he could see, and but he was constantly on a vent, and and it was like probably the worst thing that 2 parents could go through. It's all relative. When you hear of people losing an adult child or a teenage child or anything like that, it's all horrible and tragic. You lose an older child, you've lost future and history. In our case, it was all future. We had, painted his bedroom 8 shades of blue. We were so prepared for him, and all of our friends were so prepared for him. So. Losing Shane was like probably the hardest, most difficult thing that I did not think I could get through, and it definitely unified my wife and I around in our grief. It bound us in our grief, and we had a rough road for. I went and met with David Milch, a month after that, and I was in a bit of a haze, and he was nice enough about it, but he gave me the job, so I got to absorb myself in television. But I will say that every day I drove to the Fox lot from the Valley, and I thank God the car knew the way, because I was just in another zone. I was so. I always say Neil. There's a certain Neil Young album that totally just carried me. It was just the kind of a thing that got me through my grief. But and Catherine, unfortunately, we had a couple of miscarriages after that, and then we became aware of that was super hard, and it was very challenging to our marriage and stuff too, just because the sadness was just so overwhelming. But we had a great community of friends who, people say, like, what can we do? And when you lose a child, there's nothing anybody can do. Until my sister sent an article from a newspaper article she'd read in a Connecticut newspaper. We're from Yonkers, New York, and she was living just outside of Yonkers. But she'd read about this woman that built a playground in Connecticut in memory of her son, who had died of the same thing that Shane had, SMA. So my sister read it and was like, wow, we didn't know about spinal muscular atrophy ever, and here it is, like, less than a year later, I'm reading this, so I guess it's not as uncommon as we think. But Catherine and I read it and kind of went, playground? I don't know anything about playgrounds. Do you know anything about playgrounds? But the idea behind it was that one of the things that we discovered as we were researching, even just in the 2 weeks we were in the hospital, but then even after that, I became more acutely aware of my own phobia around disability. And I definitely was looking into what life would have been like had we raised a child with a disability. The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, and it basically is the reason we have those sidewalk ramps and the big bathroom stalls. But in the area of playgrounds, it basically meant that playgrounds that were wheelchair accessible basically had a cement ramp leading to a sand moat full of sand or wood chips with play equipment inside. So all a kid with a disability could do is go to the playground and watch other kids play, which, was horrific. So when we learned about the one that was being built in Connecticut, Catherine, who's a force of nature in her own right, she was just like, I want to do this in Shane's memory. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And we drafted her best friend, Tiffany Harris, and we set out to build LA's first playground. And suddenly all those people that said, is there anything we can do? We were like, now you can do something. Help us build this playground. So, little donations, yard sales, fundraisers, all manner of fundraising, and also researching how do you find playgrounds where kids with disabilities can play, like what kind of equipment is available. And there wasn't a whole lot. So it was like working with playground companies on prototypes and things like that. And it was a real learning curve. And fortunately, like I said, I had my job to go to every day, leaving my grieving wife on the couch, but she suddenly found a new raison d'etre and a reason to be with Tiffany, where they would just work their asses off, making connections with City Hall and figuring out, like, how to go about building a playground and pitching the idea. It's not a we always say it's an idea that's time had come, because it's not a hard sell. We were surprised by City Council early on, where a lot of their there were a few old crones on there that were, can you say that, old crones? Old timers that were like, how you got to keep the able-bodied kids from beating up the disabled kids? We're like, we have more faith in the kids than that.
Oh, my God.
And it's not going to be an ugly playground, is it? We can't have an ugly playground in Los Angeles. It's like, what are we? No, it's not going to be ugly. We'll make it nice. So we had a few of those naysayers along the way, but more than that, we had people like, just some wonderful people in power that heard our mission and went, yeah, we're gonna help you do this. So we raised the money within over 2 years. The city donated a piece of land in Griffith Park where there'd been an older, more dilapidated playground. Can you replace this? And we were like, holy shit, it's 2 acres. How are we gonna do that? So we had all this to fill. So luckily, it was the hardest, most challenging part of my life, but it definitely was it healed us. We then conceived later on, within that time, my daughter Grace, who's now 25 and healthy and lovely and wonderful and all that. But it was definitely a time that put career in perspective for me, and I think that might have helped me too a little bit in my career. It didn't stop me from saying something stupid to Stephen Bochco when he said, "Nice script, Scott." I was like, but I mean, I would literally be at that NYPD Blue job or Brooklyn South, and I was in a fog a lot of the time because I couldn't believe what had just transpired. Like your body, your whole everything's in shock when you suffer a loss like that. But it was obviously super cathartic to have such a great community of friends support us and help us realize this dream of building this playground and cut the ribbon on it. And Grace was little. It took us, like I said, two years to to get it together. And by 2000, we opened the first park, and we kind of thought we were done. No, I shouldn't say that. I thought I was done. I think Catherine and Tiffany had a different plan. They were like, "You do this again." Somebody on the west side had a son named Aiden, and they would drive to Shane's Inspiration and play. And they were like, "Well, how do we get one of these in our neighborhood? Like, how can we get one close to home?" Aiden loves playing here with his brothers. He was severely disabled in a chair, and he had two brothers that would wheel him around and run around with him. And so I was like, well, we kind of tapped out all our friends, for donations. They're like, we have friends. So through their friends, we actually managed, because we'd had the prototype, we managed to raise the money in half the time, like within a year. And we built Aiden's place on the west side. So that was the second playground, which then led to a third, which led to a fourth. And now we're like at, I think 80, is it 80 number? The number's 80 playgrounds
Amazing.
worldwide. We've gotten involved with the Clinton Global Initiative. It took on a whole life of its own. It's been pretty miraculous.
I read somewhere that you're opening one in Armenia too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Amazing.
We have a big Armenian community. Obviously, we built the one in Glendale, and, the Armenians there caught wind of it and went, we're going to build one in Armenia. Let's do that. Nora Yakubian. Do you know her? Do you know Nora?
I don't.
Yeah, she's a big champion of that, and lots of other great folks, too. But, we're very proud of our global outreach for sure. And again, like I said, it's, I speak at these events now for Shane's, the one that I met you at the gala and stuff, but like, I don't do any of the work. We have a great staff of people and who are both volunteers and paid, very low overhead. It's a very grassroots mom and pop sort of operation, but the outreach has been incredible. Like I was just talking to one of our greatest supporters about this park that we're going to be building now in New York. So it's like I said, it's an idea this time had come. It's taken on a great life of its own. It's not a hard sell, like in these deeply divided political times. Mm-hmm. Everybody kind of agrees that playgrounds for kids with disabilities or for kids of all abilities. Because I know. Let's hope.
Yeah. At least that.
Yeah, I try to. I sometimes still fall into the trap of saying playgrounds for kids with disabilities. They're not. It's for kids of all abilities. So it's.
Can I just say that's the thing that I love the most about the playgrounds? I went to all of the playgrounds, the one in Glendale, the one in Westwood, the Griffith Park one was probably the first one I went to. And it never even occurred to me that these are different playgrounds. I just thought these were the best playgrounds in LA.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So when I found out and I accidentally got involved and through our mutual friend Valerie, and then I just loved the concept so much. I thought, how wonderful. First of all, they're just the most creative, wonderful playgrounds that I've seen. And secondly, I mean, it's almost like a given, of course. That's how they should be. Right.
And nobody thinks of it. I certainly didn't think about playgrounds for kids with disabilities until we built it. I'm like, oh, wait, that makes total sense. And the apparatus doesn't look markedly different, except maybe there's ramps that lead to the apparatus, or there's other things that every kid of every ability can play on.
Well, and then there are more musical instruments and things that,
it's pretty neat.
Everybody loves playing with.
I still kind of walk around pinching myself a little bit when I'm there going like, holy, because
so
again,
cool.
it exceeded any of my wildest dreams.
Yeah.
The side benefit that I wasn't even aware of, or it didn't even occur to me until we were at the original Shane's Inspiration a couple of weeks in, and I was like the playground police at first. I was like, if I saw some grown man sitting in a swing, like, hey, get off that. That's for kids. What are you doing? There's a kid, and chasing, being on the lookout for graffiti artists. Don't mess with my park, But there was a guy, an older gentleman, in a wheelchair, going around with his grandkids, and I just was like, maybe military vet, whatever. I went up to him and I told him our little story, and he was like, no, I was paralyzed as a teenager, and I could never take my kids to the playground because this wasn't here. And thanks to this playground, I can take my grandkids to the playground. He goes, this is the greatest thing ever. It was this major, so that's when we realized, oh yeah, veterans, people coming home with injuries or disabilities and stuff. And again, what it also healed in me, I spoke earlier about my own biases around disability. While we were building this thing, we were surrounded by kids with disabilities. It was like I was immersed, so in this culture with both their parents and with the kids themselves. So I got past that pretty quick. I got over that. I shouldn't say pretty quick, but over the period of time that it took us to build the first playground, I was, going with groups of kids of all different abilities to like Disneyland and different things like that, and it definitely opened my heart up to an area that I didn't even know I had a limitation in. You know what I mean? I wasn't even cognitively aware of me having fears or phobias around disability, and like I said, I'm thankfully very much cured of that now, all these years later. But at the time, it was definitely an adjustment of like, and I recognized. I just said I kind of thought, I'm not overly religious, but I definitely thought someone up there wants me to go through this and course correct myself in my beliefs or even in my unconscious biases. So I'm very grateful for that. It's weird, things like this. You wish you could pick your life lessons. You wish you could package them differently. Like losing a kid, it was like I remember thinking, just please, whatever lesson this is supposed to teach me, couldn't you have packaged it in some other different thing? Did I have to lose a kid as a result? That sort of thing. But you don't get to pick and choose that stuff. It's like you just kind of get tested by life, and it's what you do with it afterwards. And like I said, I definitely think it's helped me not think of my career as all that I am, the begin and end all of my life. As much as I'm attached to loving what I do and all the good grace that's given me, but having lived through something like that definitely puts things in perspective, for sure. So and you try. I always kind of have to laugh because I always thought, people have an assumption. I certainly had an assumption that, like, once you've lost a child, it's like, it's like somehow it's going to ennoble you in some way. It's like, I'm never going to sweat the small stuff ever again. Well, of course, like within a couple of months, I'm like, fighting over a parking space. It's like, it's just, you're still living in the world. The world's still spinning. But so you're still human. You're still yourself, but you really kind of what you really find out is just how noble everybody else is, how noble, how wonderful people that, when they hear your story or they have needs of their own, how much they really do show up. I think there was definitely, I think there are those cold, timid souls that stay to themselves and don't know, and I may have been one for a time, but more often than not, it's like I think there are people that so desperately want to help and just don't know where. So
And
the minute
how.
you
Yeah.
expose them to like, here's a where, they'll, oh, okay, because that's been our life's blood. We've cycled through. We've had people that have been with us since the very beginning, and then we have brand new angels that show up on the daily now to help us do what we do. Because they're like, playgrounds for kids of all abilities. I can get behind that.
But it's so amazing how character building it also was, and how it revealed a strength in you to create something that
Yeah.
affects so many lives now,
Yeah.
and brings happiness to so many children.
Yeah.
When I come to your events and I see how happy the kids are performing on stage, singing, acting, I mean, that's like one of the biggest gifts that you can give to life.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I feel it too. I was at our last gala just going, you can't not get emotional about it. I'm not cognizant of it or aware of it on the daily. When I go to the playground, there's a level of pride that I feel, but there's it's a profound sadness where you just wish,
Yeah.
you wish, that whatever disability the kid has, they didn't have. And you just feel so sad, but then when you get to witness joy from these kids, it's like there's nothing sweeter. There's just nothing better than actually being able to make a kid that hadn't previously been able to play somewhere play. It's the greatest feeling in the world, and you're humbled by it, and I certainly didn't come here expecting to talk about it on this level, but it's like it's moving. It can't not be moving, and. Like I said, I'm glad it found us. I'm glad it found me. I'm glad it found, Catherine. I'm glad it found Tiffany, because it was like, it's definitely given more meaning to my life for sure. It's not to say that I don't get down and that I don't get, that I don't worry, that I don't have other concerns and stuff. But I know in that area, if nothing else, that got done, and I want it to keep getting done. And that's why even in the political landscape now, when I see cuts to kids with disabilities, it just fucking it kills me, and it because I know when people call me or my wife or Tiffany or any of our people that work at Shane's heroes, man, I watch parents of kids with disabilities. They bust their ass. They work so hard, and not with the resources that maybe I have. And when I see them something taken away from them, I just don't understand. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. So I take that very personally because I really watch these parents who, we had a void. We lost a child, and we had this empty bedroom where we could put a computer and a phone line in and start this little organization. So we were able to take lemons and turn them into lemonade. But, I watch parents of kids with disabilities, and they daily live with this reality of, raising a child with a disability, and then they start to deal with the idea of, well, when I die, what is my adult child with a disability? What's going to become of them? A young woman who's one of our dearest friends has been with us since she's a kid, and now she's a volunteer there. Well, she really relies on Medicaid. Without it, she's screwed. She really needs the help, and she deserves it. She's as big a heart and as genuine a person as you'll ever meet, but she needs help, and to think that that's under threat for political purposes or for the excuses of saving cutting the budget, it's just ridiculous. That's such a minuscule slice of money that will help enormous amounts of people.
Yeah.
So when I see that go away, I didn't mean to get political on it, but it's like that's what hurts so much about the current landscape, where it's like, don't just slash and call it a win. Like, look at who you're hurting, So those sorts of things. But anyway, I don't know how I got off on that diversion. So
well, yeah,
didn't mean to.
What hurts about it is that so many things have become politicized that shouldn't be.
That 24-hour news cycle, man. If I can go back in time.
And now it's on social media. It's like you can't escape it. Wherever you go, you see it. But that's one of the things that I always loved about this country, that I feel like we've always been compassionate and considerate about other people and making life comfortable and good for everyone.
Yeah.
When I was in Yerevan, where I'm from, where I was born, for the first time with a stroller, it's only then that I realized that, oh my God, this is awful. I actually can't get around the city by myself. So like every couple of steps, every step of the way, I had to have like men helping me carry the stroller down.
Right,
so then I'm like, so then handicapped people are just trapped? Like, how do they get around?
More or less.
I realized that, okay, like this is something that really needs to change,
Yeah.
So I think it's really wonderful that you talk about this, because you actually thought about it and you made it happen. So understanding that this is something that could be done, I think it's also inspiring to people like myself. And
I honestly, in many ways, I feel like I was along for the ride, because I just, we may have hatched the idea and brought the initial energy to getting it done, Catherine and Tiffany and myself. I feel like a lot of days I came home from work going, "Hey, what miracle did you perform today? What city council person did you talk into representing us today? How did you turn a no into a yes today? That sort of thing." But so I'm very grateful to have just played any small part of it. But like I said, I've been exposed to a world where, like you say, it's something I wasn't aware of at all, that most people aren't. I don't know, playground for disability, it's like, is that a need? I go to playgrounds, I never see kids with disabilities. I'm not sure it's needed. It's like, well, they're not going to the disability, no shit, because there's nowhere for them to play. So just things like that. I will say also, you touched on it a little bit earlier too, about just people being good. Like sometimes you're just amazed by the people that show up for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I get political and I'll say things, but like, I have tons of friends in every side of the political spectrum.
Same.
And so, but I am ongoingly delighted and grateful and amazed by the good in people. I really do. I'm just it never fails to astonish me. Just there are degrees. There are some that are way gooder than others, but kinder than others. But but no, generally everybody's, there's a way into everybody's heart. There really is.
Yeah.
And people, especially when they see a thing like that, when they come to a gala like that and watch these kids perform, I defy anyone to sit there and not have their heart melted just a little bit.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, no, I made the mistake of not coming with extra tissues to the first one. And then so now every time I'm like, I'm just stuffing a bunch of tissues because I know that I'm going to sob every time. But,
listen, I came here to talk about the biz, and I'm sitting here like weeping. I'm like, I didn't mean to do that. But it's like, no, listen,
you have to be a sociopath to not be moved by something like this.
Yes, I think so. Yes, that's very true. Yeah. So, but luckily I don't know too many. So. Well, I know of a few, but I don't know any personally. So,
well, you're lucky then.
I guess. All right, if I can be honest, let me think. Yeah, I'll come up with a couple. No, like I said, I just feel like I said, people talk about like the biz, and they'll be like, any nightmare stories, any actors you hate, any producers that were real assholes. I'm like, a handful, but generally I've worked with really
should we
nice
gossip?
people.
Hold on, can we gossip on
No,
this?
I'm not going to name names. No, I can tell you nightmare scenarios. But no, I've been blessed. Ron Howard was the best. David Milch was great. And Ray Liotta, God bless him, God rest him. No, I've been super lucky with the people I've worked with. And no, for the most part, I've been very fortunate to work with good people. So
yeah. And fortunately, people are much nicer in person than they are online. So
oh, Jesus. Is that true or what? Yeah, that's what online has taught us. These like brave keyboard warriors who get up there and say shit. And then you confront them on it in person. It's like, hey, man.
They're so nice suddenly, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think that's something that social media and the computer age has done badly to society. Same with the cell phone. I love it. We're all addicted to it. I don't know how I got by without. How do we all get by without GPS?
I don't know. Seriously.
Flipping through the Thomas Guide. Are you old enough to know what the Thomas Guide is?
I know, but yeah.
But I need we all carry our brains around in our pockets. Who was that guy in that movie? Oh, hold on, I'll tell you.
Totally.
Versus sitting there trying to think of it. But
I seriously don't know how I ever drove without GPS. Like I would be so lost now.
Exactly. I want the machine to tell me where to go.
Exactly.
And let alone check traffic and all that stuff. But so technical advances, AI. Everyone's having a lot of fun with it now. Oh, look at the picture I made. It's like, yeah, great. It's like it's going to cost everyone their jobs if you keep So we have to figure out a way to roll with it because it's coming.
I'm just thinking about the Terminator all the time. I'm like, oh God, I loved that movie as a kid, but that's fucking scary ass shit.
Guy at work today was talking to his Siri, and he goes, "Oh, I'm always Siri and Alexa. I'm always super nice to them. I never like.
I say please and
thank you. I never talk shit to
you.
Alexa. I'm always like, thank you, Alexa. Because someday they're going to turn on us, and I want to be the nice one.
That's hilarious, yeah. Scott. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you here.
I'm sorry if I got maudlin toward the end there, but I appreciate it. Thanks so much. I'm a Gabby Gus. So
no, it was so interesting, and thank you so much for being willing to share, because I know it's not something easy to talk about, but at the same time, I do want everyone to know about the playgrounds and about your organization.
That means a lot to us. Yeah.
Let's also mention
InclusionMatters.org.
Yes,
that's the organization.
Yeah, and how can people contribute?
Go visit the website, InclusionMatters.org. We never say no to donations and people that want to help. If you don't have money, no problem. We got a great volunteer group that all get together and like I said, whenever anybody in the industry, especially if I meet with young writers and stuff, I'll always sort of say eventually you're going to hit that poor me, I got rejected, I didn't get the job, I didn't do that or whatever. Anytime you feel yourself getting wrapped up in the poor me and my and all that, pull your head out of your ass and do something for someone else. Like go volunteer somewhere, honestly. And not in order to do something. Yes, it's great to do things for someone else, but you'll feel better. It's like you'll get better context around your
perspective. It's all about perspective.
You get better perspective about your career and stuff. You'll feel better about yourself. So so InclusionMatters.org is a great organization, and we put it's Inclusion Matters by Shane's Inspiration. We changed our name a few years ago. So but yeah, support that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me. Thanks.
A huge thanks to Torpedo Comics and Essentia Beauty Spa for helping to make this podcast possible. You've probably seen Torpedo Comics in your local malls, but you can also visit them online at torpedocomics.com for an amazing selection of comics and collectibles. As for Essentia Beauty Spa, their beauty experts are truly unparalleled. I trust Diana, the founder, with all of my hair needs. She's simply the best. For more information, visit essentiabeautyspa.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Your support helps this channel grow, allowing us to bring you even more engaging and high-quality content. You can also follow us across all social media platforms.